There you go, guys. Wanted you to see my banner. So, so welcome to the Paranormal Pride tonight. My guest tonight is going to be Joe Cetrone, and he's running a little bit late. So hopefully you guys will be able to enjoy what he has to share with us, because he always is got such a lot of information to share. And a couple of his books. One is The Sally House, Exposing the Beast Within. I know that that's kind of hard to see because of the glare. So it's a really good book. And if you had a chance to read it, it talks about not only the Sally House, but the Glick Mansion, which I don't know if it's still a bed and breakfast anymore because they sold it. So I'd have to look and see, but it still shows up as Tuck You In bed and breakfast. So it might still be active as a bed and breakfast. And stay in the first lady's room or in the attic. Both of those were haunted. And then this other book, The Invisible War, Unveiling the Secret World of Spiritual Warfare. This one is really good. So, like I said, there we talked about a couple of his books, and thank goodness he's here, so you don't have to listen to me yammer on. So my guest tonight, Joe Cetrone, and hopefully he's ready to go. He's waving. So
I am ready to go. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can see you. I can hear you.
Beautiful. So, I'm so happy I'm here.
I'm happy you're here too, because I was able to dig out the books. Of course, I have more. I mean, I think I have 4 or 5. I think I have 4.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So how have you been?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing very well. You know, it's a little bit busy here and there, but life is going on, and it's just good to be here. It's good to engage with other fellow peers of the paranormal. But yeah, it's good. I was scrambling, and I'm saying, oh, I got to make sure I make it and get the central time all matched up right. But I'm like, here I am. So I'm here. It's good. We can go on. Life is good.
It is good. I'm just happy that you're here, and I'm so glad I contacted you to say happy birthday on your birthday, and you suggested this.
Absolutely. And I wanted to do it because, one of the things that we always talk about in the paranormal is the paranormal. We're dealing with spirits and houses and investigations, but I'm not sure if anybody just sits and goes over just what happens in the life of a paranormal investigator, and how they live regular life and how they do life, in the natural realm, and problems and, relationships and children and just life as a whole. So it's really good to just kind of be that person and not always be the person that, people might see on TV. So it's good. It's more healthy to get to know an investigator minus a lot of the paranormal, and what do they do in the normal, I guess, is the whole thing.
Right. Because there is a lot of paranormal investigators out there that have no other life.
Right. Which absolutely
is strange to me. I mean, yeah, I live my life in the paranormal, but that's only because the paranormal's in my life, not because I'm out searching for it. It's just there every day. But I can separate the two. I can go to Walmart and not talk to people about the paranormal. Carl, on the other hand, cannot, down in the green room. He can't. But I can go to Walmart and not talk to people about the stuff that's happening all around me at the time. And because everybody doesn't need to know what Denise does in her spare time. So, but we all know what you do in your spare time because you've been on different TV shows talking about it.
Correct.
And you wrote books about it.
And I wrote books about it. And yeah, so, interesting that you just said that, like, going to Walmart and things like that. And, for me, it's true. It's like when you get involved with the paranormal and you're doing some TV stuff, or you're doing investigations or interviews and all those little things like that, you always wonder, like, hey, what does the average paranormal investigator do? Well, obviously, we do go to Walmart and we do shop and we have families and all that stuff. But what you said that's what's interesting is being able to balance the both, because I'm not sure that everybody can do that. Now, I'm not saying that investigators don't do that. They absolutely do. But I think there's some people that are so, once you get verification of the unseen realm and you get footage and, you take your pictures and all that EVPs and you realize like, wow, this is real. Like, this isn't just television. A whole invisible realm exists. Sometimes it can consume you to the point where all you want to do is study it and research it and be in it and help people and do all that stuff. And everything else, tends to fall by the wayside. And it's like some people can balance it, but some people make it like, I have to do this. Everything is paranormal. Everything is centered on helping people. But what gets neglected, at least as COVID, and I'll explain that after, but from COVID on, what gets neglected a lot of times is family and is priorities and work and just everyday life, that it's like, hey, you know what? I still got to survive, but I also have, I have my wife, I have my children. I still have to engage in doing that. And it wasn't until COVID that I realized that there needed to be a balance and I was missing so much.
Well, I think COVID did that for a lot of people. And for other people, it broke their families up. I mean, let's be honest.
That's true too.
we know that some people couldn't handle being with their family every second of every day. And I tell people this all the time. I worked from home since 2007. So for me, it was no different. The first week that they had everything shut down, I created myself a workspace because since 2007, I'd been working in the middle of our bed. I would just put my laptop there and I would just work on it. And that was it. I didn't care. I didn't have I did have monitors. I didn't have multiple monitors like I do now. I basically just made do with what I had. And I sat there crisscrossed. That's why my feet are like up here now, because I always sat crisscrossed on the bed, just typing away. And that's the only thing that changed for me. Oh, and I cleaned out my closet. that was great. It. So, so a lot of people didn't get to do like I did. They were thrown into working from home and had to figure out how to do all this stuff again. And, some of the stories that I heard is that people were hearing noises in their houses that they'd never heard before, that they were, that their houses were haunted, which it could have just been, hey, normally your pipes make that sound every day. You're just not here to hear them. We had a lot of that going on, but we also had a lot of people that both the husband and wife, or not husband and wife, both people were in the house working at the same time, also juggling the kids going to school. We lucked out. No, they didn't close our schools here, but
that's good.
Parts of the Kansas City area did. I heard all kinds of horror stories, and, I don't know if you had to deal with that, but, a lot of people had to figure out who they were as a family again. And
wow.
And I think that's good. So, but then we also had all these places that people want to go do paranormal investigations. Those shut down because they didn't have COVID cleaning, things like that. Let's be honest. Most of the paranormal locations aren't clean.
Right.
We know this for a fact.
Right. Absolutely.
And then a lot of people didn't do residentials because of COVID as well. And so for a year, at least a year, things didn't get done the way they did before. And I don't know if they are getting done the way they did in 2019, the same way now, And has that changed? How has that changed for you?
So that's interesting. So obviously, as you know, COVID, you're working, everybody's doing their thing. And then we find out about the shutdown and everything happens. And as media is on media. The whole world was in shutdown. So for me, first thing I had to do was like, okay, so now what? So, you have to file, I had to file the unemployment and do all that stuff. And I'm like, after about a week, I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do at this point? Like, I don't know what to do. I can't go anywhere. Everything is on lockdown. What do I do? So what you said was, was really profound. It's finding yourself again. So I'm like, okay, what can I do? What are things that I have neglected for so long? And you make this whole list on what am I supposed to do? And I'd be like, okay, well, we need to do this. So I guess we can start doing projects in the yard. So we had done yard work. We had fenced in the backyard, and just little things that we're doing, painting. And I'm like, okay, so we have to do that. So we do that. We find that balance, and then it's, occupying the same space, 24/7. Like, can we all get along? Can this all work out fine? And obviously it really did. But it did allow me to do something that I had neglected for the longest time, and that was being a musician and playing drums. So probably about 3 weeks before the whole shutdown, I was in Guitar Center, and I'm like, okay, so my acoustic drum set is really loud, and I'm like, I don't want to just start banging on my drums and bothering the neighbors and all that stuff. So I ended up buying an electric drum set. And, I started playing that. So then once, because in my job, I was out for three months. So it wasn't even just like a couple of weeks. Like, I couldn't work for like 3 months. So I'm home for like 12 weeks. So actually March, right? So March is basically the shutdown. I don't go back to work until June 28th. June 28th. Yeah. The 28th of June, I went back from March. So I was home all that time. So what it did allow me to do is find myself musically again. Got to play drums, started listening to all different types of music, and just saying, wow, you know what? I've missed it for so long, putting the headphones on and just playing different music. And I'm like, well, you know what? I am a musician. So I got to concentrate on music again, doing stuff around the yard, family time. My wife and I would actually sit down and watch movies, have dinner, watch movies, and just kind of, I don't know, I guess you rekindle, at least I did, rekindle my whole relationship again to say, you know what, this is great. So by the time it came to go back to work, I said to myself, wow, I was fighting it so much to want to be at work because I was home. And now that I'm home and everything's right, it gave me a taste of what it would be like to either be retired or just being in a situation where I can just kind of not do anything other than what I want to do. So it was...
the independently wealthy thing never happens, does it?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, if life would be different, then I said, but if I had that opportunity, like say, to be home all the time and independently wealthy, then I wouldn't be out in the field. And even when I'm working or I'm just out there and meeting people and I'm networking, and you get to find many interesting people, but you could also help a lot of people, because I can only do so much from being at home than being out engaging with people. And that's what I like to do. So I got to come full circle is I've learned. So basically what COVID did to me is it gave me balance, to balance family life, the physical realm, the invisible realm, my talent as far as, my gift of playing, of playing drums. And it got me to write and work on this new book that I've been working on for a couple of years now anyway, but it gave me a chance to kind of reinvent who I am inside, other than just, hey, Joe, the paranormal investigator, or just Joe, the drummer. It was just like Joe, the family man, the everything, the dad. It was really humbling. For me, it was a humbling experience. Didn't start that way, but it ended up very humbling.
Well, I don't think it started very good for a lot of people. Me, on the other hand, when it started, like I said, it didn't change anything because, first of all, I live in Kansas. It's rural. I live very rural. So
Right.
nothing shut down here except for some bars and some restaurants, and which wasn't a problem. It we just I cook at home anyway, so it's not like it's a big deal. It was a bigger problem for Ron because he could only work 13 hours a week.
Wow, right.
And so, and both of us were necessary workers during the shutdown, because I work for a utility and he works for a banking company. So between the two, he was out in Walmarts every single day. We had COVID before COVID was cool. We had it in December 2019. And before they had a name for it, they kept telling me that I had bronchitis, that I had a severe sinus infection. And finally, I just said, the heck with it. I'm seeing the ENT anyway. I'll let him diagnose me. And he goes, oh, it was probably a virus because you seem to be over it now. I was sick for 6 weeks and he was sick for 2. And so needless to say, not a big deal, really, for us. I'm not saying it wasn't for everybody, because I know that's not the case, but we lucked out. And I'm glad we did. So, but yeah, it's nice that, like Darren says in the chat room, that, they didn't shut Iowa down. You could still go paranormal investigate in most of the places up there that, if you were willing to go. We were supposed to go to Vegas the week they actually shut everything down. So that actual week we were supposed to be leaving, and we could have stayed at our daughter's house, but we didn't know what we were going to come across between here and Las Vegas.
Right.
Would we be able to stop and go to the bathroom? Could I get food?
Right.
Because, New Mexico, they shut everything down. Rest areas and everything. It was, and those rest areas still aren't open. So you look at all this stuff, and that's when I stayed home and made my desk space and all that, because it wasn't worth it. So I know that there's a lot of different, ways that people dealt with this. Did you do any consultations with people who were having paranormal activity during the shutdown?
So, interesting enough, I had done, through the website, I occasionally, get the emails, and, and a lot of them are just asking questions, simple questions, and other ones are just kind of a little bit more detailed. The first person that reached out to me, I believe they were in the Washington area. And I found the case really interesting because the client was claiming that there was an entity in the home, and they felt it where it was pressing on. She would say that when I'm sleeping, I feel it pressing on my chest and crushing me, and nightmares. And in the paranormal community, we have a set of questions that we usually ask, and a lot of it is the basic stuff, and you go through the whole thing, you start your checklist, cold spots, orbs, this, that. Do you feel like when you catch something in the corner of your eye, all the basic preliminary questions.
All right.
But she was asking, she was answering stuff, but also talking about things that I knew really made sense, that I'm like, okay, you know what? I think there's something happening here. So unfortunately, though, I can't get there. So I tried to find somebody in the area, and nobody really responded. I reached out to like 3 other groups in the area.
Was this Washington, D.C. or Washington State?
It was Washington State, actually.
Okay.
And
I can see why, because they shut everything down there. They had it really, they were one of the first states we were hearing the worst stuff out of. All the centers and all that. So yeah, I could see why you wouldn't be able to find anybody up there.
Yeah, it was tough. But then I came up with this idea. I said, okay, everything is virtual. Why not a virtual investigation? So I said, okay, I can't go there, obviously. I can't take pictures. I can't, run the EMF. I can't do anything. So I had the client and their spouse. I says, here's what I need you to do. I need you to take pictures in the areas where you're feeling things. I said, just snap as many pictures as you can. I said, I also need you to get a recorder and record, get a videotape. And I said, these are the things that I want you to do for the next 24 to 48 hours. I says, and then we'll reconvene. And obviously, if you get anything on camera, send me the pictures, and EVP is the same thing. I said, we're going to do it virtually. I said, but I feel like I need to help in some way instead of just turn my back and say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So try to be creative as best as I could. And of course we did that. So they took me around the house, showed me around, through with the phone, and said, okay, this is the bedroom. So I try to put myself in there without being in there. I didn't get anything. They didn't get anything on the camera. They got a little bit on the EVP, I believe, on the recording. And at this point I said, hey, listen, well, okay, what can I do? So I can only make my advice, okay? So I'm like, well, try doing this, try doing that. I said, about as far as your faith, what is your faith? And I gave him, prayer, and I came up with this whole little analysis, it's kind of like final field report. And I did the best I could. But in the midst of all this, there was a house right down the road from mine that the person has owned it for 2 years, but they won't go in it. They only go in it to check on it, see about the heat and all that stuff. It's a really, really nice home. And she said, I can't go in here. I'm afraid to. But the house was vacant. So what I did was I went in there with a team of people, a couple investigators, and we went in there. And come to find out, the person that lived there before died in the home of cancer in the bedroom. And I had captured orbs. There was also a photograph that the client had snapped a picture of that showed a face in the slider, like the sliding deck in the back where the porch was. There was a face, looked like a female's face that was in there. And I went around the house and got an EVP, and the EVP almost kind of mimicked what we were saying. And I'm like, okay, so obviously there's something here. Matter of fact, one of the orbs that I had captured in the home too was a blue. It was a blue orb. It was a decent size blue orb. So I get the blue orb, we get the EVP, get the picture, and come to find out that the furniture in the house was actually the people that lived there. So the woman that died, the furniture was still in the house. Like some of the things that she had, like there was like, I want to say like a table and chairs and something, like a couple of things like that. So I go to them and I said, listen, I meet them at, I think we met at Dunkin' Donuts. I said, listen, there is definitely something in your home. And she was like, I feel really, really creepy. I want to sell the house. I don't want to live there. I presented the evidence, wrote a little field report, and she said that I really want to, I want to sell the house, but I don't want to sell the house knowing that it's haunted. So I says, well, this is what you need to do. You need to get out, get rid of all the stuff that you have in the home, furniture, things that I can attach. I says, get rid of all that. I says, I'll go through the house. I'll pray. I don't like to use the word cleansing. But I go in the house. But I do a blessing in the home. I pray and cleanse it and clean it to the best that I possibly can. So I said to her, okay, so anyway, and that was it. She sold the house and thanked me. And she says, listen, if it wasn't for COVID and me actually reaching out to a friend of a friend who knew me, this would have never happened. And she was able to move on with her. They were able to move on with their lives, sell the home, feel peaceful about it, get the furniture off. And so got to meet people also during COVID on a whole different level, not like a superficial level, but almost kind of like something that we could all relate to. Like, look, we're in some trying times here, but even in the midst of the trying times in the natural realm, there's a lot of stuff that's happened in the spirit realm. And right around that time, you had a lot of UFO sightings that were happening. Just so many crazy things were happening in the supernatural realm.
I think part of that though was because people were staying up at night. They didn't have to get up to go to work, so they went outside, and because that was one of the few places they could go was their own backyard. So they're out there in their yard. Oh, look at that! And I think a lot of people misconstrued the International Space Station for UFOs at times.
Right.
Because I was watching it the other day, and one of my cousin's son works for NASA.
Okay.
So I've heard stories about the International Space Station, and it has some hauntings on there. So if you're wondering if there's hauntings in space, there is, which I did not know that until a few weeks ago when I was looking over some of cousin Dan's kid Dan's stuff. So I thought it was interesting. So
that is interesting. Wow.
But I don't know if there were more Bigfoot sightings. Were there more Bigfoot sightings during COVID? Because everybody was out camping and stuff?
So if you ask some people, that the ones that are into the whole cryptozoology and really get into it, it did seem that, so obviously you talk about like the aerial phenomenon, the UFOs. Were they all UFOs? I mean, you had some of the stuff where like you had the Air Force that were actually chasing these things and they were moving at speeds at like 900 miles an hour. Then you had the other ones, like you said, that got misconstrued. I think right around that time, there were Bigfoot sightings in Canada and up in Maine, if I remember correctly. I also believe that, I don't know, don't quote, I don't know this for sure, but there was that show on Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know if that came out in the midst of COVID. I'm not sure, but that kind of
Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah. This is the third season.
This is the third season, so yeah.
Yeah.
So it was. So you had that. So now that brings a whole new thing with what was happening over there with the Skinwalkers and of course, as you know, Richard. He's been following a lot of stuff with the Skinwalkers. So I think there was a lot of things that were happening in the spirit realm that people thought was like, maybe it was Bigfoot or maybe it was this and that, but I'm not sure what they were. Like, I almost feel that in the midst of all this trials and tribulations, that the demonic realm, if you will, and once again, it's another term that's used so lightly, but
so offhandedly anymore.
It's like you can't even say demonic anymore, because it's like, everybody looks at you and says, oh, you're one of those guys, or you believe in that stuff. But the truth is, it is true. You're dealing with these malevolent creatures from another dimension that now is the perfect time to cast a lot of confusion as to what they really are. So now you got your mind on what's happening politically. Then you have you got the UFOs, and then the Bigfoot, and then this and that. And it's like these smoke screens come out, and we have to realize, like, what is the main source, and what rulers and powers and principalities that are actually working behind the scenes to that without giving it titles. Let's talk about what's really happening, and all this death definitely has kind of been an invitation with everybody that it's died to ring in a whole new order of chaos is the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, because it's we're at one of those times where don't look over here while this person, don't look behind the curtain. One of the things from Oz, don't look behind the curtain. There's no man back there. And so, you just don't know which thing we're supposed to be looking at. Apparently, we're supposed to be looking at what they're not showing us. But again, everybody's so distracted. In Kansas, it's right now. I've gotten 14 videos today sent to me.
Wow.
Because of abortion. I threw away 12 pieces of mail today on that. And it's like, my mind's made up. You're not going to talk me out of how I feel. So go away, leave me alone. I've been blocking all kinds of political stuff today.
Right.
And the thing is I know that this is a smokescreen for something else. This is to get your mind off the fact that gas is $4. It's gone down $4.39. It's to take our minds off of all this other stuff to distract us with this one thing. And it's the one thing. One thing isn't going to get me distracted. I'm sorry. It's not. Because there's all these other things that have my attention too. And that's how we all need to be as people. We need to be paying attention to
what matters.
The things that matter most to you, but what matters most to the people around you too, because we're not in this in a vacuum. Whether it's Bigfoot, ghosts, aliens, politics, getting gas, getting groceries, we're not in this in a vacuum. We all have to pay attention to what's going on to all these other things. So, but yeah, it does, like Steve says, makes you wonder what they're really hiding. So, but it is what it is. So I'm going to ask you some of these questions that have come through before.
No, you can. Absolutely. Listen, I wanted this to be too, is that, when you do interviews, there's always you say certain things and everybody sticks to, the basic topics and they talk about this and that. But I wanted this and I know that you're that type of person. You want to just keep it real. And I think this is a time that's what we do. To me, this interview is just keeping it real and rough, raw, and right into it of just how much that this affects. And I will say this quickly. I agree with you. I think that it is definitely media, television. They know how to desensitize things and keep your mind off of the greater picture by giving you a little this, a little that. It's like a horror movie, or when you watch like when you're at home and you're watching a horror movie, right in the midst of you're horrified watching this scene, right? And it knows just to go to the commercial, and then they'll put something on a Palmolive back in the day commercial, and it takes your mind right off of it, and it just takes that out, and it just desensitizes you, and you kind of get that horror right out of you, and then you go back into it. So it's kind of like media is really dictating. Media is definitely driving the behind the scenes and what they want you to know and what they don't want you to know. It's really ingenious, actually.
Yeah, I'd really like to see what's redacted from everything, at this point.
Right.
No matter what it is, what is the truth, and what part of the truth have they redacted so it meets the agenda of what they want? Because there's not a lot of non-truths in everything. It doesn't matter what it is. There's non-truths in the paranormal, as you've seen. If you've watched any paranormal TV shows, there's some non-truths there. There's some all-out lies, and there's some fact. So it's just, and it's one of those things I call, a friend of mine coined this term, his name's David, paratainment. And it's to get you hooked in to come back and watch what they're going to do next and all that, which is fine. That's the entertainment part. And, and you were part of a show that you were giving your paranormal facts to, but they were taking other people's stories and putting them out there. And when I told somebody, I said, you sign on that dotted line, your story, it becomes their story, and they can change it however they want.
Absolutely.
And, so some stories get more glorified than others, or more horrified than others.
Right. True.
So it just depends on the show. And I mean, and they put words in your mouth, not yours. In my case, words were put in my mouth, or the words I said were there, but they were cut up. Little bitty slices were taken out that were really important.
Right.
But I signed on the dotted line, and it was their material, not mine anymore. So they do the same thing in every show, every media. Days of Our Lives does it. Okay. They say one thing, they cut it out, and it ends up on the floor. So just remember that just because you see somebody say something on TV, it doesn't mean that that's exactly what they said. So they can fix that. So, and like I said, you, on your part of Paranormal Survivor, I think it was, right? You told the truth of what you felt. You were the paranormal expert is what they would call it, I think. And
yeah. Right.
Yeah, you and everybody on here knows Linda Carino, because her and I are really good friends. And, yeah. And when you say expert, you always go expert but you've got a lot more experience than a lot of people, a ton more. So I respect your opinion 100%. But again, a lot of people don't realize what goes on behind the scenes of these TV shows 100%. And we don't know. I mean, even though we've been there, you and I've been there, we still don't know everything that goes on. We just know our parts. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to ask Gary's question. He asks, what is your favorite part of the paranormal?
My favorite part of the paranormal is helping somebody overcome any traumatic experience that they had associated with the paranormal. Meaning, it's not about getting the evidence so much. Obviously the ooh-ahs when you first start getting into it, it wasn't getting the evidence. It's knowing that I left and made an impact on a client. And when I say making an impact, I mean not using them for, getting evidence and taking that stuff and those findings and putting them on the web, putting them on my website, or just say, hey, look, I got this, I got that. It's knowing that these people, when they reach out to you, they're truly hurting. They want an answer, and nobody else can give them that answer or has given them that answer, and they're looking to you for that. So that has given me a whole different thought of how I approach a case. It is really about, can I leave this family knowing that there is unresolvement in anything. So for them to turn around and say, thank you, Joe, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to help me, or you've made more sense. That is the best part for me, is knowing that I left somebody where they can have a little bit more peace of mind and a little bit more insight as to what was happening, why it was happening, and what they can do to prevent it.
So basically, you went in there and you made them all feel better about stuff, and that's always important. One of the things that I call under promise and over deliver.
Right. And the other thing too is, and you're right, because a lot of people, and I'm not going to say a lot of people, but there are teams that will go in there and just kind of keep it superficial, get the evidence, offer a solution, and then just leave. And they never follow up with their client. And I couldn't do that. Like, I couldn't just say, oh, it's such and such again. I can't answer that email. I mean, I'm the first one to email them back and just let them know that, hey, look, I'm going to help you the best way I can. So yeah, it's being real with them, giving them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not, but also know that everything that I do, because look, the hardest thing to do is the right thing a lot of times, right? So I would just I would always just make it say, look, I know you want to believe it's this, but it's not. It's this, or it's not this. And a lot of times people are grieving and they want an answer, but if they lose a loved one, whether it's a relative or a spouse or a child, sometimes clinging to the paranormal and seeing a team go in there and take pictures and doing all those things is giving them hope, because that whole paranormal experience is keeping them linked to the possibility that those who have passed are still, their essence is still alive. It's still in another dimension. It's just in a different form. But I really believe that, a lot of people just want somebody to talk to, tell their story, and get some sort of answer as to what's happening. So, I mean, I do
see that a lot, especially in people that have lost a loved one who'd been around, 70 years of their life,
Right.
It's hard as far as that goes. In fact, right now our niece is planning a wedding. And I told Ron yesterday, I said, she needs to put ceremonial spaces for her grandmother, Linda, and her grandfather, Harold, Ron's dad. I said, because they're both there. I said, they're going to be there whether she does this or not. I said, but I think it's good for everybody to know that they're there. And because I told Ron, I said, they've already told me they're going to be there. And I don't want to be at the wedding having people come to me and going, is Linda here? Is Harold here? I don't need that. It's not my wedding.
Right.
I don't want anybody focusing on the fact that I can do this. I don't want them to know. I don't want them to be focused on that. I don't want them to be focused on the fact that I already know that the location's haunted.
Right.
I've told her that it is, but I told Ron last night, I said, you need to tell your mom this. So he goes, no, you need to tell Taylor that. And I think that it's important that we do that. Do you think that that's a good idea, to basically have a ceremonial spot for the grandparents that aren't there?
Yeah. So things are so, like, I guess what I have learned is everybody, and you probably have talked to so many people. I think that a lot of people have different ways of grieving. And I know that everybody's intentions is always for the good, at least the most part. Mm-hmm. But what I have come to my conclusion as of recently, well, not recently, I've known for a while, but where I can really say it to myself is, death now to me is not the end at all. With all the experience and going on different cases and seeing things, death is not the end. It's just a transition. So what I try to do is, I don't view death as death. I view it as, okay, listen, this person has gone on, and to speak of them as if they're dead, have passed, and keeping them here, it's really not the end. So I think a lot of times when people do ceremonies in general, and of course we could remember all the good times, and those memories will be with us forever. But I try to think of it now as, okay, listen, they're not here physically, but they are still in existence, because energy, we know, can't be destroyed. So I look at death a lot differently now. I look at it as just a transition. So really, it's just whether you're in the physical or in the spiritual body, it's just a different transition between realms, but it's just not death. So I guess I try to answer the question in the best way I as far as my opinion on it. We could grieve people. We can do things in memory of them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think when we dwell on the fact of what once was, and we stick to that, then we acknowledge them. We acknowledge them as people who are past and deceased, like as if they would have never existed again. And I don't believe that. I believe that we all reunite. I mean, obviously, you know, it's a lot more detailed than that, but I think we carry on, and we'll know those answers on the other side.
Yeah, Steve says his thought is that a special area is not a good idea. Sometimes it holds a spirit energy back and doesn't allow it to move on. In this case, I'm not talking about that. These family members have died a long time ago.
Right.
They've moved on, but they've made themselves known at family events. Like there, when Taylor announced she was getting married and Brooke graduated from high school, we're sitting there in the kitchen. I can see Linda sitting at the table. And so she was there partying with us. So she's having a good old time. And Harold was, well, he was sleeping in the chair in the other room, and he'd been gone since 2019. So it's like they've moved on. They just come back at times to visit, just to say, hey, we're here. We love you. We like being part of all this stuff. And I tell you, with Ron's family, as every time they take pictures, there's a picture of Ron's family, and was it grandma that had died? There's a giant orb by grandpa on the picture. This is back in the 80s, I think it was. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I never got to meet Ron's grandparents. And so, and then the next time there's another picture, and it's of the kids, and grandpa had died, and there's two orbs in the picture, and they multiply over time. And so we're going to a family reunion in August. And it's not going to surprise me in the least if you can't really see the people for the orbs.
Right.
So it won't surprise me, but it is what it is, and it's Iowa, so it'll be dry. It might be dust, but it'll be dry.
And it was Steve, right, that said what he believed, right? Was Steve? So I think I agree with Steve. I listen. I think it's okay to acknowledge and celebrate, or to those who have passed. But I think when we tend to make it more than it is, then we can build that stronghold. And if we have that stronghold or on that grip of a particular area or a place, then we can. Then you could open yourself up to other frequencies and other situations happening. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you this story, and you just talking about the orbs, it just reminded me of the recent paranormal experience I totally forgot to mention. So my dad has been passed since 2005. So he had died 2005. It was July 12th of 2005. So my mother, probably about 4 days before, so we were 12, 11, 10, it was probably around July 7th, July 8th, my mother, I'm in bed, and she calls me up, the phone is ringing, I'm playing a game actually on my phone. She calls, and I'm like, I'll call her after, I gotta finish this basketball game. So I'm playing this basketball game. Then she calls my wife, Cheryl, and she says, oh, your mother's calling me. I says, well, you better get it. I said, she just called me. It must be important. So now I'm nervous. So she answers the phone, and she was frantic. And so she put her on speakerphone. I says, what's going on? She says, you're not going to believe this. She says, I'm shooken up right now. I says, what's the matter? So she was in the living room, and then she ended up going into the bedroom for something. And in the bedroom, there's a bunch of pictures that she has. And one of them obviously is of my dad. And the picture was a picture that was taken probably a week before he died in 2005. She says the picture, it's the room is pitch black. Before I could even turn the light on, that picture starts glowing and illuminating. It just lit right up. It was like she was like, I can't explain it. She says, all I can say is this: it started illuminating and lit right up to
And this
show
was
me
with
the
her own
picture.
eyes, right?
This is with her own eyes. And she said, and then she stood there and she was scared. And then it just stopped. And I said, well, that's when I said, what picture was it? And then I said, well, Ma, you know what? This is pretty much almost a week before, his memorial would be coming up, say, right? July 12th. And the picture was also a week before he passed. So I'm thinking that was a way of him connecting to say, hey, listen, I'm still here. But what blew me away with my mother is she says, she said, I've never seen anything happen like that. Like, I said, well, Ma, listen, we've been linked to the paranormal for so many years, right? You've witnessed all this thing. I've done TV shows, and now you're acting surprised as if now you're accepting that it's real. And she says, no, I understand that. I've seen, I've heard EVPs and I've seen pictures, but something so tangible to see a light illuminate something that's not really there because it's not like a light from this realm took me back and made me realize, like, wow, this is real.
Yeah.
And she says, and it's one of those things that I'm never going to forget it because it's so embedded in my mind now of what I saw that I just have a whole new outlook on the invisible realm again, like almost as if I got caught up in just daily life and totally forgot about this, and this little nudge to just let me know that, hey, I'm here and this is real. So it was pretty mind-blowing on it to
I
have my
bet.
mother finally conclude that.
Well, my mom swore for years that I couldn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. I didn't have paranormal experiences until she saw me on TV. So
Right.
it's like, Mom, I've been telling you that, I've told you this my whole life. Just because you told me to stop talking about it didn't mean it stopped happening, So I'm going to get to another question, but
Sure.
I'm so glad your dad made himself known. And one comment I'm going to make is maybe as paranormal investigators or people who experience the paranormal, maybe sometimes we get desensitized to the stuff happening around us because it happens so often, especially in our own homes. We're not expecting it in our house. We're expecting it out there, not in our house.
So, wow, that's actually, that is awesome. And here's what I'm going to say to this. But like, you're hitting on all the points. So all the years since my dad has been dead, 17 years, right? I have not had any experiences with him at all. And I start to realize that why I think I haven't is because I don't know if I have fully grieved. See, so when my dad had passed, it was so sudden. And, I had to kind of be strong for everybody else. And then as time went on, I got involved with the paranormal even more because I think what I was trying to do was kind of in my own quest, find proof of life after death, if you will, in my own way of grieving that I never really grieved, and I think that maybe he's known that. I don't know this for sure. I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe he's known that. And I think that I blocked that part out where I won't allow myself to see anything when it comes to him. Maybe I'm afraid. And then when I say afraid, it's not so much like I'm afraid of seeing an apparition, but I'm afraid of just the fact of, we have some loose ends that we never tied up. And there were some things that I never got to say, and neither did he get to say it. And I think I have just blocked it out and turned shut my blinders off. But anyway, what I will say is this: after my mother had that happen, I had a dream of him, and he was in a car, and he's driving by in this car, and it stops, and I'm not really saying anything to him, and he's really not saying anything to me, but he looks at me and I know it's him. And then the security guard, it was like a security guard, and says, okay, we have to go now. And he left. And I woke up and I remember saying, wow, was that really him in the dream? And or did I have an opportunity to say something to him and still didn't? I don't really know. So I think there's some unresolved things that is why I haven't. Where my mother, on the other hand, he had supposedly had appeared to her within, a week or so after he had died, and they actually had a conversation. And how when it's a paranormal experience is you could dream of a loved one that's passed, but a lot of times you're dreaming of something totally different, and then when they show up and kind of invade your dream, where they're not part of the dream, but they interrupt their dream with their presence.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with my mother. He interrupted her dream, and she had this deep conversation with him and saying, like, is this really you? And he says, yes. And she says, can I touch you? And he says, yes. And she said that she knew it was him, but he was a lot younger. He was a lot vibrant, He looked like, and he probably looked like he was in his 30s. He had this young vibrancy, but she knew it was him. Mm-hmm. And then he said that, can I come with you? My mother said, and he had said to her, no, you can't come. That it's not time for that. And then he left. So it's pretty deep.
So far, since my mom passed in 2017, I've only heard her footsteps. And I was in the hospital at the time. And what was funny is that the hospital I was in, it was the same room that I was in when I gave birth to my fourth daughter. And my mom was there for the birth of that fourth daughter. So I know it was her footsteps because I knew how she walked, but I have not had any true paranormal experiences with my mom. My sister says she does all the time. But again, my mom was always with that sister, always.
Right.
My mom, okay, we have a saying in the family, we can't die because somebody needs us more than
I like it.
So I mean,
right,
you have that situation going on too. You can't die because the other kid can't do something,
Right.
So my mom couldn't die because Judy couldn't take care of herself. And my mom's like, with me, she's like, you take care of everything, you're fine. And I understand the grieving part. I don't know if I've really truly grieved completely for my mom, because she was my only parent from 2010 or from 1975 to 2017.
Wow.
That's a long time to only have one parent. And then to wake up one morning and find out suddenly you're an orphan. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a 50-something-year-old orphan, but I'll be fine. But I did have to hold it together for my sisters, for my kids. My daughter had just had a baby when my mom died. I mean, 36 hours before my mom died. So needless to say, I was needed in two places at once. And so I had to hold it together because I had to do all these things. And I don't know if I ever will. And I don't know if I'll ever have a paranormal experience that includes my mom.
Right.
But I do think that my mom has visited my granddaughter Clover because Clover does things that remind me of my mom all the time. And I don't know why, but there's some things. But we're going to ask another question here. This is going to go back to your virtual reality.
Okay.
So Darren asks, what about virtual reality investigations to go across seas to other locations? Do you think that's a good possibility?
So that's a great, so I will say this, right? Now, obviously, I mean, as an investigator, you actually want to be there. You want to kind of take take everything in and kind of just, see the house, go into the rooms and just kind of see if you can feel things and use your EMFs and, all that type of stuff. And you just want to be there, But I have to say that what has occurred to me that maybe, just maybe, and hopefully somebody's not going to take and run with the idea, but I do believe that we could go outside of the country, because I know there's, obviously all parts around the world that are dealing with, their own things that are happening, and death and diseases and wars, and we all know that. But I would love to have a team and do virtual investigations in countries and areas that you cannot physically go to. And I think that might be something that's worth looking into in the near future, to reach out, to other people and say, hey, listen, virtual investigations, write it all up. What is a virtual investigation? Well, it's actually, which I think what I like about the idea is it gets the client more engaged into what's going on in their home. So they're the ones that have to get the equipment, use the equipment, take the pictures, and kind of almost, you're kind of almost coaching them through of how to be an investigator themselves,
Right.
And then compare what's happening with all the evidence we get, and then to send that to, say, me, and I can go over it, and we can actually be part of this, even though it's virtual, just kind of like doctors do it, right? Virtual visits, right? So no, I think that is a wonderful idea, and it's something that maybe because of this conversation, I could look into a little bit more, because you can get out there to help people. You can still do it, because listen, if the spirit realm, as we know, is not part of this realm physically, right? So then why can't we do the same thing on a virtual thing and not really be there physically either?
I think it would be interesting to be part of something like that. I mean, because I've done remote viewing. We've done some investigations where somebody will send me a link like this, and we'll go in, and like we just recently had one where we couldn't go. We couldn't go because I've had some health issues, and so they said, hey, come on here, and I was able to at least vicariously investigate through the internet. Basically the same kind of thing. And we had a good time, doing that. And, I think that it's another way to help people, and possibly the people that are asking for the investigations can take ownership. And I think that the clearings that they do would take hold better than somebody going in there and doing it it's not their home. They have to live there, we don't, kind of thing. So if they screw up, we're there to coach them to fix the problem. That's the only thing, but I always have this rule that I don't investigate my own home.
Right.
So, and it's because I have to live here. And usually when I'm helping a client, I go in I ask them before I go, what is your goal? Is your goal to have the spirits not be there anymore? Is your goal to have the spirits just not be mad anymore? Whatever's going on. What is your goal? Yeah, not do you want to be on TV? Okay.
Yeah, right.
Never a question. But what is your goal? Because if I'm going to go in and investigate someone's house, I need to know what their goal is before I do anything, because I don't want to go in and investigate and then leave them with a irritated ghost because I came in there and poked it with a stick.
Well, I'm going to tell you this, right? So the only way to really how it works is to try it. So I'll challenge you as well. We can get a case and introduce this whole virtual thing. Let's see if it is something that we can do. See if something that we can all connect together and and try to help a client. We should
Okay.
give it a shot. I think we should try it.
Yeah.
Let's find a case and do
Ron's
it.
in. Ron just said
Right.
he's in. He's
I
sitting
say
right
we
here.
do it.
3 days
And who
in.
said that? Who said that?
Ron.
Darren was no, but was
Oh.
Darren the one
Yeah,
who answered the
Darren
question?
did too, and Ron. There's
Hey,
Ron
all right,
saying hi
so-
to you.
Hey, buddy. So Ron, you're in, and Darren, thank you for telling me something that, like I said, I did it during COVID, and it was a little bit awkward, but yet, listen, it saves on gas. It saves on having to travel. You know what I'm saying, or
Right.
stay up in a hotel. But more than anything, and as we know with prayer is not something that is physical. It's something that's spiritual anyway, and we don't need to be present in a place to pray in that place. So
No.
I really think it. I tell you what, I think it's worth a shot to try to see what we can do with it.
Okay. Well, since you just said prayer, I'm going to skip over some questions and I will come back to them. But
Okay.
April, she's my cousin. She asks,
Okay.
do you study prophecy at all?
No. April. So April, that's a great question. So here's how I look at it. Okay. Obviously, I read scripture. I pray. I do all those things. I have read prophecy as far as reading Revelation, and I've followed some of the timelines and biblical timelines. Richard is really good at that. That's what he does. But for me, I'll follow the signs, but I also know if I get too involved with prophecy, then what that does to me is it kind of takes me a little bit off the beaten path. And why I say that is, look, 30 years ago, with the things that were happening, we could have had end time prophecy even then. So I try to tread lightly of how far I take prophecy. But I will say this, April, I will say that if we are heading to those last days, if you will, and I agreed with what Richard had said, we are definitely only in the very beginning of it. So as bad as everything is, and it is pretty dark, I don't think this is even close to what is in store for us if we were to follow prophecy. So what I try to do now is while we're here, while I'm still able to help people and do things, I try to live in the now to do what I can as much as I can. So when that time does come and we do go into those end times, it might be a lot harder to go ahead and do investigations and pray with people. And I think it's going to get a lot more difficult. I think now is the time to just go and do what we need to do while we can do it, while it's still in a window that's, not so bad. But to answer your question in a very short way, I study it. I just don't get too involved with it because it ends up making me go a little bit too much obsessed into it. And I don't want to do that, because if I'm no good, if I let that sidetrack me too much, then I'm not good enough to help, a mind frame to help people now in what we're doing.
Perfect. Here's another question. Gary asks. He asks, do different color orbs have more or less strength?
So there is a chart if you go onto the internet, and obviously the internet has everything that you possibly could want to look on, right? So you've got different color orbs that have different meanings. They'll say like a blue orb or a yellow orb might mean angelic, or however, everybody's got their interpretations. But I will say this, I believe that spirits vibrate at different frequencies, and when they vibrate at a lower frequency here, I think is where we get those globes, the orbs, right? I think that it takes the less energy to do that. I have seen spirit orbs, not just regular, natural orbs with like dust or electrical, by the outlets. I have seen orbs that were kind of like dull looking, and then I've seen really, really bright ones. I mean, bright, almost that looks like, the full moon, that has like a ring around it, kind of like that little corona that goes all the way around it, really, really thick. So yeah, I do believe that each orb, by the strength of the orb, dictates the frequency and the energy of that orb. So I believe that the brighter the orb is, the more energy that spirit has, and the more ability that it has to manifest and move into different parts so fast. I think the duller the orb is, they're using less energy, and it's probably good in their mind, maybe, that they're using the less energy to so much exert themselves. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying that that's truth. I'm just saying that that's how I perceive the different frequencies of orbs work.
So, and Ruth, to your question, some orbs, yes, they're dust. Some orbs are water. But if you've seen any of the orb pictures that Joe's gotten, you wouldn't have any doubt. The one that still sticks out in my mind that I talk to people about all the time is the one that you took of the house next door, of the Sally house.
Oh,
and you showed it to me, and I told you who the people were that I was seeing in your orb, and there were faces in there. And I don't do pareidoia. Okay.
Right.
I don't see faces in stuff. I've never have. In fact, Ron will see something in a picture and I'll go, I don't see it. I'm not good with that. I actually see people. The actual, their actual essence I actually see. So it's really interesting. But that picture that you took when we were there, that one blew me away when we saw it. In fact, Ron and I talk about that all the time, because there are orb pictures that people get that it looks like a snowstorm, and yeah, that's dust. But the ones that you get are amazing in detail.
So it's Ruth, right? So Ruth, I will say this, that probably 90% of the orbs that are captured are electrical, through the electrical units. It's dust. It's a bunch of combinations. I mean, you can go outside in the rain and see bright orbs. The snow, you can see orbs. So I agree with you. A lot of it is natural, but as Denise was saying, the supernatural, if you will, orbs that we've captured in various cases, these are a lot different. Yes, you're going to get that orb structure. You're going to get the sphere. You're going to get some bright, glowing, if you will, vehicles, these little globes that move across. But inside, how you'll know the genuine orb mostly is the inside of that will be a face or multiple faces. And to the point that the faces aren't just in your imagination, you can, once you know what to look for, you really do see the imprint of eyes, nose, cheekbone. We've seen stuff like that, like you said, on the other house that we took, that when we were there, that still blows me away, of that face that was in the lower part. But
right.
We've also, yeah, exactly. I know the exact one you're talking about. It still blows me away to see the residual or the imprint of somebody, someone that is now, not physical, but yet you can still see the essence of who they are. But also, Ruth, you will see orbs that have faces that aren't human looking. You can have it where we've had it where it almost looked like a reptile, if you will. And when I say reptile, I mean just something that doesn't look human by the face and the shape. So that is really the difference of what we're looking for when it comes to orbs. Is we're looking for, is there a face or faces inside? And if it is, can we pull those faces out where we know it's not just our eyes playing tricks with us, on us.
And that one that I was talking about, I actually have pictures of the people. That's how I was able to say, this is what it looks like. And I think I pulled one of the pictures up and showed you the person that matched that picture. Or matched the face in your orb. So you wouldn't have had that information even back then when you investigated the Sally House originally, way back, was it 2008? Right. You would never have had this data because it wasn't available.
Correct.
On the things that I had. So it was just kind of really interesting. So we're gonna mess you up here with a drum question.
Sure.
So Julie asks, do you play drums on Twitch? She's learning to play drums and she follows Matt Scurfield on there. Do you play on Twitch at all? So
I don't do that, but what I'm trying to do now is this whole reinventing of Joe the drummer, if you will. I'm trying to now. I'm going to get back onto Facebook. I've been off of it for a while. I'm going to start doing some drum videos. I'm going to even post it on my site that I want to start doing drum stuff. I want to start like showing things like, double stroke rolls, paradiddles, answer questions, things like that. Because speaking of virtual, the drummer for Shadows Fall, he used to drum for Shadows Fall and other bands like Overkill. His name is Jason Bittner, great drummer from New York. He started during COVID doing virtual drum lessons, which to me was, I had taken some lessons off of him when I wanted to kind of like brush up on my double bass drumming and just a little bit more speed and technique. So I'm thinking that within this next month, I'm going to start doing some instructional videos. And then I don't say instructional videos because, I know everything about drums, but I know enough to get somebody started, or at least enough to know to get somebody to understand music and how even so much that the paranormal or the spirit realm, if you will, and music are connected together. So, the vibrations and the harmonies of the universe and of God and of prayer and of music is all intertwined together. And that's the expression of who we are musically, just like Psalms with David were songs. So I think I'm going to definitely get onto that, and hopefully I will let Denise know, and then maybe we can all just kind of rendezvous and do that. So I'm looking forward to getting. I've been getting more involved with drums now. So that's a great question.
So here's a follow-up question to that. Ron asks, are you still with your band?
Okay, so Ron. So I've come to the conclusion in my life that throughout all the years of playing out on weekends, throughout the decades, if you will, doing shows, that I just don't have it in me to play, say, with a band particularly, and stay with that band and rehearse and learn material and do that. So what I do now is I fill in. So when
you're an independent drummer.
That's correct. So when somebody needs a drummer, they give me the set list. And obviously within my realm of the music that I like, they'll give me a set list, and I'll show up at the gig, and I'll do the show, and they'll pay me, and I'll go on my way. So yes, I still do fill-ins, but not so much like dedicated to any type of band now. I've kind of gotten out of that whole phase. But I won't, if the show is right, I'll definitely be that fill-in or that studio guy if you need something in the studio.
And so Ron's next question is who do you think the best drummer in the world is?
Wow.
I'm going to go with, I guarantee it's probably not Mick Fleetwood.
Yes, no. Wow.
That's a throwback, isn't it?
That is. I was not expecting Fleetwood, although he really is
He is very good, but
very good drummer.
yeah.
So
he won that award for some reason. I was like, really?
Yeah. So as I've gotten, well, obviously growing up, I would probably say that Neil Peart has
That's
definitely
what he expected you to say.
Yes, he's definitely been my drummer. I learned a lot of Rush songs, growing up, and and he was a big influence. But I have definitely gotten more into now the technical drumming. I think the bands in Europe, Sweden, all those bands like Nightwish, Seventh Wonder. There's a lot. There's these guys. They're so incredible, technical, fast, and talented drumming. I would say right now, my drummer of now. So you got Neil is always going to be in his own realm, always be forever what got me started really into drums. I would say that right now, Mike Mangini for Dream Theater is one of my favorite drummers. And he's from Massachusetts. He's definitely one of my favorite drummers. And the other drummer that I really like is his counterpart, if you will. I like Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater, the original drummer. But I also, I would say the top three drummers for me is going to be definitely Neil, Mike Mangini's on that top, and I guess I'd have to say Mike Portnoy. But I'm going to tell you another drummer, and look him up when you can. Thomas Lang. YouTube the drummer Thomas Lang. He's definitely a studio drummer. He does all sorts of seminars. He actually auditioned for Dream Theater when they were looking for a drummer. But you just watch Thomas Lang for 5 minutes, and then tell Denise to get in touch with me on your thoughts of Thomas Lang when you see him play. He's a combination of Mike Portnoy meets Neil Peart.
Wow.
With a body that can play probably very, very fast and technical. So do that. Thomas Lang.
So
I've seen him.
Yeah, Ron thinks he's seen him on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw the auditions.
When they did the auditions.
Yeah.
So Ron, just do he just posted a video about I think a couple of days ago. It's like 5 minutes long. YouTube that one. I don't know the name of it, but definitely YouTube it. But these guys, though, what I wanted to say is, these bands with these drummers, it's like I reach out to them, on YouTube or even on their website, and a lot of them will respond back and answer questions. So these guys are really I think since COVID and they can't really, meet fans and do a lot of meet and greets, they will actually talk to you on YouTube and stuff like that now. They've been more open. I think musicians have realized what's happening with this whole pandemic and how people can't get to their shows and how tough it is, that they've made themselves more reachable to their fans out there. And it's been really good.
Let's see. Here's one of Darren's questions. He asks, what's been the hardest investigation you've ever done?
So the hardest investigation I've ever done was, all right. We had done a case. I had done a case with Richard. And I keep talking about Richard, but Richard is a friend of mine. He's with the group. Well, we're with the group. It's called SRT. I've done cases with him. And one of the bigger cases that we did was in Connecticut. And we had done that Connecticut case, but here's the crazy part about it. We do the Connecticut case simultaneously as we're doing the case. I think we were videotaping in at 8:15.
there was a disturbance and interruption in the videotape. Something just went, some sort of frequency. And there was even an EVP, I believe, that came out right around that time of that little psh. Simultaneously, while that's happening, we're doing that case at my house at 8:15, confirmed by my mother, water tank blew in our basement. And there was a porcelain doll that my mother had in the den that she was, some old porcelain doll, probably about, I don't know, a foot tall. Anyway, lifts up off the den and shoots across the wall and leaves a gouge in it. So now I go back to the house. We get the EVPs. She tells us about that. And then my son at that point happened to see a shadow person standing on the porch area that was probably about 6-7 feet, he said. And I think that was the first time that it hit home with me that it's not just about being an investigator and going out on a case and just doing that, but you have to think that depending on what entity or entities or who that you're dealing with, because there's no time, there's no physical constraints in the invisible realm, that they knew enough to do something at my house. And I think that was the first time that I realized, like, wow, I could really be putting my family in jeopardy and not thinking about it, because you think you're untouchable. You watch, you see it on TV. You go to a house, you do cases, everything's fine, la la la. But it really wasn't. It was like wow, and coincidentally, my son was actually attacked by an entity, scratched on his forehead and flung 6 feet across the room. And I remember calling the demonologist, John Zaffis, when that happened. And I says, John, I got to talk to you. This, I explained to him what happened. And he said to me, he says, well, Joe, let me ask you, what did you really expect? It
sounds like him.
yeah, exactly. Like, what did you expect? You're tapping into this whole other realm that's like a large ocean, right? With fish and things that are in the waters that you don't even know that they exist because they're so far deep. And that's the spirit realm, that you don't know what you're bringing, what you're allowing into your life, and who you're aggravating. And he said, let it be a lesson that you got to make sure that what you're doing for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons, because ultimately when you know that they exist and you know this is real and it's not just a bunch of Hollywood stuff, then you have to really realize why you're doing it and make sure you're doing it with the right motive, because there's a lot of happy endings to the paranormal stuff and people getting houses cleansed, but we don't talk about a lot of stuff that happened to people and the fallout and the emotional psychological torment that you go through as an investigator.
Yeah. And not only that, the torment that the people that are living through, survive it,
Correct.
I mean, knowing personally the ordeal that Deb and Arnie went through up there, I'm still upset that she passed away, but but knowing what they went through, and that's the devil made me do it case for those of you out there. I used to be on a radio show with her every week.
Wow.
With Deb. And Arnie would get on there every once in a while when they would talk about the case and stuff like that. And so when she was involved in all this stuff, she actually kept notebooks of stuff, that would happen in the house, even after, the possession and all this other stuff. They still had activity going on in their house at least till she died, that I know of.
Wow.
And so she kept notebooks full of this stuff. She believes that the paranormal had something to do with her son committing suicide. another repercussion of all the stuff that has happened in their lives. And to be honest, I was shocked as anything when I found out that they had sold their story to The Conjuring stuff. But Deb was sick. They needed the money.
And they needed the money.
Yeah. And like I said, Deb and Arnie aren't that far from you. You know, they're down in Connecticut, but all those states are all cramped together up there.
Yeah, they are. Everything is like...
It's about an hour away.
Right.
And, unless you're going to New York, then it's not. But yeah, it's just one of those things that we don't realize the repercussions. And so that's what people need to keep in mind. If your whole idea is to get on TV, your motives are not pure, and there's going to be something that's going to happen. But we're going to take it. I think we're going to take a short break. I have a little commercial I want to play because I had somebody make it, and I want to make sure that I use it. So let me see if I can get that up here.
Okay.
So
and I'll be back myself, right? Short break?
It's
How
short
long?
break. It's about a minute.
Okay. All right.
So,
I'll go 1 minute. I'll be back.
Okay. I will start after you go. Just go.
Okay.
So everybody, I'm going to play this commercial for you guys. I hope you enjoy it. And I think it's cute, and I like it. So here you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rex.
And I'm Shane.
We have a new show on the Bill of Rights Network. It is called Music, Movies, and Maybe More.
We explore bands that we've heard of that a lot of people haven't, that we feel like you should know about.
And we do the same with movies. There's a lot of movies out there that we know about that other people should know about as well.
And as for the maybe more part, you never know what else we can come up with.
So, on the Bill of Rights Network, every Saturday night, live at 7 p.m. Central Time, Music, Movies, and Maybe More will be on. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you there. Now we'll return you back to Paranormal Pride and Denise Pridemore.
Boy, that was quick. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little clip. And if you guys have another commercial you want me to want to come up with one for me, please do it. I'd love to see what you guys have in mind. So it's always fun to do something a little bit different.
I like it.
Yeah, I liked it because one of the shows on the network is music, movies, and more, and more. So needless to say, you might get poached by by Rex because he loves music, and so they're also Rex is also a paranormal investigator.
Nice.
And so I said, told him, I said, you know what? Let's promote your show. Do a little video, and I'll play it on here. And at the end, he put, now we'll go back to the Paranormal Pride and Denise Pridemore, which I didn't ask for that, but so it at least makes for a good ending commercial in the middle of the day or in the middle of the break. So I've got a couple more commercials coming because I told my producer I wanted to have a 5-minute break at the top of the hour,
right,
in case I needed to run.
Right.
I want to have commercials ready in case I need to do something like that. And right. Since I've only been on this network about a month, I don't have commercials up yet. And when you were talking about Richard, I had Richard scheduled on when I was on the other network, but we had different issues. I got sick. Kat got sick. Kat had a death in the family. Then I needed a break, and here I am. So I'm going to have Richard on, and our topic is going to be religion in the paranormal. The importance of religion in the paranormal is what it is. So I think that would be a really good one. And so when that does happen, I hope that you guys will come back and listen to Richard Grund. He has a wealth of information on all kinds of things. I just find him to be very interesting. It seems like I've known him forever.
Right.
But I haven't. But it's been what? Since 2016, I think, when I met him. It was after I was on one of your shows. So thank Thank you,
Yeah.
Susan. And Susan, I hope you're doing well. One of my friends in here, she's going through cancer treatment. Kind of worried about her. So let's see here's our other question. Gary asks, what do you think about dowsing rods? Do you have any thoughts on them?
Yeah, I never really got into them. Me personally, so the first team that I ever kind of like trained under was Keith Johnson, and he was in a group, I believe it's called New England Anomalies Research.
Sounds
NIR.
right.
So anyway, Keith Johnson, Sandra Johnson, Carl Johnson, great people. We had done a case, and it was in Connecticut. There's a lot of cases in Connecticut. A lot of hauntings in Connecticut, it seems. But we had talked to somebody who did dowsing rods, and they told me a little bit about it, and I'm like, well, that's pretty fascinating. So me personally, no, I definitely haven't done that. I know there's also, if I remember, there's like another device. It's kind of like digital dowsing. I forgot what it's called, but yeah, I never really tapped into that. I'll be honest with you. No, I haven't.
Yeah, you have pretty good luck getting EVPs anyway.
EVPs, I just simple EV. If you give me an EMF detector, a recorder, and a full spectrum camera, that's all I really need. But there's other people that do different things. They'll use dowsing rods, and they'll also use like the spirit box. They'll do that too, and try to get something, EVPs in real time, if you will. I don't know. I think what was the Ghost Adventures? Did they use like what was an SB7 spirit box, something like that? The little. So yeah, I mean, all those things. I don't really recommend, tapping into all the different things that are out there for the paranormal or using for investigations, because I do believe some of those things do invite other things in. But rods, no.
I'm pretty good with them, but I stopped using them because I already knew the answers to the questions. Because, like I tell, Carl will, the producer on his show, he'll use dowsing rods, and I'll tell him what the answer is,
right,
without looking, because I know I can say something and it could quite possibly skew you,
right,
and so I try not to really look at the time.
Yeah, I
because
get that.
I already know, if I already know the answer, I'm so it's one of those things. And Gary, I'm going to ask your last question here, but it's probably I don't know. So his last question here is, in space, are those spirits going up with are they going up with the people that are on the ship? I don't know why that would happen. And the question is are they really spirits? Is it something interdimensional? Is it, like aliens?
Wow.
That are doing it. I don't know. I just know that this is one of the things that was brought to my attention, that there are spirits on the International Space Station. Is it attached to somebody who had died while they were helping build it? I don't know. Is it the people from the space shuttle that passed away? I don't know, since I can't go up there to investigate. I don't know.
Wow, that's so, interesting. And obviously, that's a good one. So here's what I'll say. And Richard, like when you interview Richard, it'll be the same thing. He can break it down, beautifully. But if you were to take the religious aspect, and I do the quote, you take the religion out of the equation, you study scripture, you study, you get to understand angels and messengers and extraterrestrials, if you will. It really is a message the Bible is a message of extraterrestrial origin, as far as I'm concerned. And when I say it like that, I mean that I don't necessarily know what exists out there on other planets, but I do say that these beings are definitely from other dimensions in our universe. And I do believe it gets misconstrued a lot. Aliens, demons, angels. But as far as that, I don't really go too much deeper into it because obviously I don't know. I mean, it's a vast universe. I think, though, what I will say is it's a great deception to convince people that everything is science-based, extraterrestrial-based, and not spiritual. Because I think when you look at it that way, it becomes not as much threatening as it would to be dealing with entities that are good and entities that obviously want to destroy you. So I think it's such a fine line between what is spiritual and what is science. And maybe in the middle, they both meet somewhere and the answer might lie in the middle. But the alien gospel, if you will, has definitely taken a whole nother realm where people look to these aliens as our gods, and maybe they were our gods all along. So that's something I would really be excited to have Richard break that down even in more detail.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to him. I've got to get him rescheduled. And here's another question from April. Since you just took a drink, what's your favorite drink to relax?
Favorite drink to relax? So I would probably say the drink that I have to relax is, I don't advocate alcohol, but what I will do is my wife and I, when we make dinner, we'll have some salmon. I'll have a glass of wine. I say a glass of wine with my dinner and a nice hot cup of green tea. That's what does it for me. That relaxes me.
That's good, because the green tea is really good for almost every part of your body.
And water. And obviously I try to drink a lot of water. So water, green tea, and occasionally a glass of wine with my wife when we're just sitting down having some dinner.
Yeah. Mine, on the other hand, is unsweet tea. I'm not a very good Southerner anymore.
Yep.
You know, people go, well, you're from Baltimore. Well, Baltimore's in the South. My family's from Virginia. And I can't drink that sweet tea anymore. So,
right.
Okay, here we go. How do you feel as far as blessed water or holy water to clear a problematic area?
So I don't use water at all. And I'm not deterring anybody who does. I have my own thing that I do. Usually what I will do is when I go into a home and do a blessing, if you will, you know, I'll go pray around the home. I will use oil, holy oil, if you will, you know, oil, blessed oil. Mm-hmm. I'll anoint the doorposts, the windows. I'll do that. A lot of times it really, as you know, just like with the water, it symbolizes the Holy Spirit. But I think now it's come to a point where I'll just even go in the home and I'll pray in that home, and I'll just pray. I'll just do an open prayer. I'll pray with the homeowners, you know, and that's about it. You know, I did the holy water at one time when I was first getting into the supernatural. Then I went to the oil, and now it's just pretty well straight up prayer, because ultimately we really need the faith to believe that we can go into a home, and faith in God enough to know that we could rid a problem through our faith. So it's not so much of using any type of object that's going to rid something. It's the faith behind that object. It's the faith behind the water, if you will, or the faith behind the oil that you use. But without faith, everything else just becomes kind of like going through the motions with things. You know, that's why, like, when you watch the vampire movies back in the day with the crosses, and I'm just using this as just a thing like, Salem's Lot and all the movies we see, Fright Night and all the classic 80s. One of the things that I think it was Fright Night where the Roddy McDowell used the cross on the vampire, which I think was played by Chris Sarandon. He puts the cross up and he says, "You've got to have faith if you want that to work on me." And I think that's what it is. So what we use, I mean, everybody does their own thing and has their own ways of doing things. But I just encourage that whatever you do, make sure that you're strong in your faith and you're doing it for the right reasons.
And Don has a follow-up question and says, I find that sage burning is beneficial and is refreshing as well. What are your thoughts on using sage for cleanser?
So I don't use sage personally, but I will tell you this: a lot of teams that have gone there use sage. They've cleansed the house. They've used it to go through cleansing homes. They've used prayer with sage. Obviously, it smells really good. And interesting enough, I will say this, and I don't know how true it is, but it was an investigator. It was a demonologist actually from New York that had told me this, that sage in a house that has true spirit activity, that there is something about the smell of sage that really is like good for the people, the smell of us, meaning us here in the living, but anything that's malevolent do not like the smell of sage. And it's worked for a lot of investigators and demonologists in cases.
And sage is actually an antibacterial. So
Really?
Yeah. But again, I like Palo Santo. It's a one step. I mean, if you're going to go with sage, you got to go with seagrass or lavender or something. And I like Palo Santo wood. It smells really good. And I also like lilac. Both things work the same way, but you don't have to put something. You may take out the negative and you're putting in positive at the same time, as opposed to taking out the negative and then adding the positive. And to be honest, I hardly ever use sage. If I'm clearing place, I'm usually telling somebody how to do it, and I give them what their options are and let them do it because it's their house. They need to take ownership. But here's the next thing. Leslie asks, do you believe in portals?
Ooh, yes, absolutely. I definitely do, because we have done a case. Rich and I did a case in New Hampshire. I believe it was New Hampshire. We go in to do the case. I remember I was with another investigator. I started getting really, really lightheaded. Now we're outside, and it's about, I'd probably say about 6 o'clock, right? So it's still kind of light. I start taking a bunch of pictures. I get a little dizzy, and I went into the house. And I remember as soon as I went into the house and went up to the stairs, my EMF detector went off. So I start snapping more pictures. When we went over all the evidence later that night and into the next day, there were about 3 orbs that we captured. One of them looked spirit. The other one I couldn't detect, but there was another one that was an orb that I would say it's a grayish type of orb, and it had a profound ring around it, but it almost looked that you could see the trees, because it was in front of the trees that we took the picture. In front of, you could see the trees behind the orb, almost kind of like a little semi-transparent, and there might have been a face in there. And I remember Richard saying, we were saying, well, you know what? I think that this is the entry point in the portal of where they were coming through. I think I think the portal was in the backyard, and they were coming in and out through that. Just kind of like, even when you talk about the Sally house, I don't know what investigator it was. I think it was with the Kansas team that she said, one of the investigators said, visualize the Sally house, and outside there, that the Sally house is almost like a bus stop for the supernatural, for spirits to come in and out. So these vortexes, these portals, I do believe definitely exist, because I think that those are the entry points which beings can access and come to and from.
A friend of mine, she was at the Sally house and we met her up there. She took a picture in the backyard. And I told her, I said, I always see in that spot where she took this picture, this Native American sentry. And people, you have to know the history of Atchison to know what I'm talking about, but there's Indians up there, or Native Americans. I don't want to offend anybody, indigenous people. And he didn't wear a feather. And it was common for the sentries to not do that. And this one would just stand there in the yard and watch. And I think that where she got wasn't a picture of the native. I now believe that it's a picture of one of the portals that was there in Atchison.
Absolutely.
So it in the backyard, you know, in the not far from the corner of the red house next door. So, you know the red house, the one you took a picture of.
Yeah, the red. And, you know, I wanted to elaborate on something you said too earlier on. When it comes to TV shows, Paranormal Survivor was good to the point where, you know, I got to do that one episode with a case that I helped that investigator. And then I did kind of like consulting on the other episodes. It was Haunted Case Files when they had me do the episodes, like five accounts of my cases that I had going on, where they kind of really, I started to realize how they started, changing things. When we talked a little bit about the Sally house. So you give them that rendition, they have you say a bunch of stuff, you tell your story, but once they do that editing, they splice it all up. They make it sound like you're saying something different than what you are. They take key pieces out and put generic pieces. And I wanted to just say this. In one of the cases that we were that they were gonna do, I interviewed for. And it wasn't Haunted Case Files, it was another show. And because I wouldn't say that I was inside during a blessing or it was an exorcism, because I wouldn't say I was there, inside there. They wanted to make it into this whole big story and put me in there and be part of this. Because I didn't do it, they didn't air the episode. And that's when I realized that exactly what you were saying. When you're into the paranormal and you're involved with it, if you're doing it for TV, if you're doing it for notoriety, if you're doing it for money and to have it, have your own show, if you do it for all those wrong reasons, I think that you're going to get a lot of backlash, spiritually, faith-wise, even with your faith, and of course, obviously, in the natural, meaning if you're not going to play their game, then they're not going to have you on. They want you to beef up stories, make things that talk about things that aren't there, based on a little bit of truth, and they kind of splice that up. And I will say this, as you're talking about the Sally house for me in 2007, I went in it for a lot of the wrong reasons, because I was, once again, I knew Jason and Grant and all that stuff, and maybe I can get my own show and maybe we can do it this way. And it came to only make me realize that I put others in jeopardy, and I kind of lost what I was trying to really do, and which was to help people. So when you're talking about sage, when you're talking about oil, holy water, when you're talking about doing cases with all the things that we were talking about throughout this show, if your motive is not pure at heart to truly help a person or help a family, if you're not really in it for that, then I think that's when the invisible realm, you get to see the ugly side of the invisible realm. Because what the things that I saw in the Sally house when I was there in 2007 versus when we went back, I think it was 2017.
Yep.
We're
10 years later.
Yes. Two entirely different spectrums for two entirely different reasons and two entirely different, as far as evidence wise and outlook on it all, that I have to say that if I could go back and do certain things all over again, I think I would have gone into the Sally house initially with that pure heart of understanding the supernatural realm and what was happening to the people and the Pickmans and everybody that was getting involved, instead of just thinking of myself. Because I think at that point, media definitely has a play into it. And obviously it can cause a lot of traumatic and spiritual residual for years to come.
Well, I'd like for you guys all to check out Joe's website at joecetrone.net. I think you'll find some good information out there, and you can catch up on what he's doing and when he's doing it. So, and then make sure you search Joe Cetrone on Amazon for his books. And I'm going to recommend, if you can find the book Seduced, you will want to talk about it. And I will talk to you about it all day long. I read it on a trip driving from Kentucky home.
That's right.
And in fact, I read part of it to Ron on the way. I guess I probably read most of it to him on the way. And check out, if you can find it, The Invisible War, Unveiling the Secret World of the Supernatural Warfare. This one is really good. And The Sally House, Exposing the Beast Within. That will talk about the first investigation that he did there. And we're still waiting to find out what's happening with the last investigation that they did there in 2017. I'd like to know.
I know, right? You know what? Me too. I'm trying to know too. When is that coming to?
When is the deep darkness going to see the light of day? I don't know.
Exactly, because it's stuck really in the deep darkness right now. We can't get it out.
Because apparently every time we try to do anything on the post-mortem, something happens with either me, Richard, his wife,
right,
his son, Steve Hayes, the film.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and we've talked about trying to finish up the post-mortem, which I know sounds bad. We were in the paranormal talking post-mortem, talking about that. We can't get anybody in Atchison to talk to him.
Right.
But again, it's because they don't want people to know that you guys cleared the house, and they don't want to know what I have to say on what I witnessed after you guys left.
Right. And there was a lot. And then I'm going to tell you, listeners out there, really, like Denise said, don't hesitate. Contact me on the website. And who was the one who talked about the drums?
That was Julie. Oh, and Ron.
Yeah.
Julie and Ron talked about that.
So keep in touch, and we'll see what we can do in the virtual thing. Let's do this virtual thing. I've got notes on that. I got notes on that, so I will make sure we find a case, and so I got to make sure it's not somebody I know personally, though. I kind of want it not to be somebody I know personally, so I don't read more into it than like April, you were a good pick, but I know you too well. I'm sorry. And April asked if you were ever coming to Wisconsin at any time. I would like to come to Wisconsin, actually. I'm trying to do some things, hopefully in the very near future, where I'm doing some speakings and get myself out there a little bit more. And so hopefully we'll get out there. I'd like to start to venture in. So I'd like for all of you guys to join us next week for guest Darren Buss. He's participated in this show tonight, so I think you guys will really enjoy hearing him speak. Awesome. He's also got a paranormal talk show, the Paranormal Bus Stop, I believe it is. I'm not looking at it right now. I have nothing else on except for my lights and my camera and my computer. So I'd like for you guys also to know that you can come back and join us every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central, as long as it's not a holiday or I'm not dead. I plan on being here. So, and just to let you guys know, my motive for doing this show is for you to meet all my friends. That's it. I don't have any notions of becoming famous for anything other than being friendly. So that's my motivation for all this. Yes. And then I want to say this one more thing too, to you guys, that what you're doing is really great. That's why every time it comes up about doing interviews, I want to be part of what you're doing, because obviously I believe what you guys are doing. I know your motives are great, and we get to just kind of speak natural and raw. It has nothing to do with following a certain script, or you have to ask these questions, you can't ask this. I say we go into it, we all talk, because the more we can network together, we can find a solution for a lot of the issues that are happening in the paranormal world, and be that voice to help people. So it's a great thing what you guys are doing.
Well, all I know is that I love it. I love doing this show, and I love letting everybody meet my friends, and especially the people I've met personally are huge. And I mean, it's not just Facebook friends. I like Facebook friends, but again, and if you do your show, get it on YouTube, because otherwise some people don't get on Facebook and can't see that.
Right.
Such as Ron. And if you use StreamYard, you can post both places, Facebook and YouTube, and other places as well. So check that out before you do that. But everybody, thank you so much for being part of tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback, please let me know. If you guys have a location that we could virtually investigate, let me know, and maybe we can vet it and see if that's something we can do.
Awesome.
So you guys have a great night, and see you next Monday.
I love it. That's great.